Doklam section of the China-India border. China said Monday it had made on-site checks of India's withdrawal of personnel and equipment from Doklam, also known as Doklam, after over 2 months of military standoff. On June the 18th, hundreds of armed Indian troops with 2 bulldozers crossed the boundary into Doklam, China's territory, to obstruct Chinese infrastructure construction. The standoff was followed by another skirmish in mid-August along the line of actual control near the Pangung Lake in the western part of the China-India boundary. Now that the standoff in Doklam has ended, some questions still remain. China and India are 2 nations with great history. Also, both are nuclear-armed countries. Together, we have a combined population of 2.7 billion. Can the 2 rising countries get along in the future while they grow in confidence and reach? Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. And today, I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Vishnu Sharma, a New Delhi TV's defense editor and principal anchor, and Yo Dongxiao, associate professor at the International College of Defense Studies, the National Defense University of China. But before we start the discussion, let's first take a listen to what Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said earlier today during a routine press conference.
8月28日下午14点30分许。
At 14:30 August 20th, India pulled back its troops and equipment to the Indian side of the border. Chinese personnel there have confirmed this. China will continue to exert its sovereign rights according to historical boundary treaties. We hope India will abide by historical conventions and basic principles in international law and maintain the peace and tranquility in the border region together with China on the basis of respecting each other's sovereignty to boost the development of bilateral ties.
So a piece of good news at the right moment. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Vishnu, first of all, welcome to China.
Thank you.
Yes, and NDTV actually is one of the first TV stations to break this news. How important is this for your TV organization?
No, it's very important, I think, not just for my TV organization, but for people in India and people in China. June is when the standoff started. The standoff has ended. I think it's important that India and China bring their relations on an even keel. As speaking for my organization, it's been a lead story for a very long time, and it'll certainly be the lead story at the moment, also tomorrow, but for once, for all the good reasons, that it's over. It's done with. We do not need standoffs between 2 nuclear-armed neighbors, and hopefully going forward, we won't have situations like this again.
I know it's a bit early, we're just hours away from when the news broke, but so far from the information you already got, how have the Indian public been reacting to this?
I think the Indian public would certainly look at this as a very positive development, a development which marks the accumulation of obviously successful diplomacy. As you know, diplomacy requires 2 or more partners to work in unison towards a common goal. In this particular instance, China and India appear to have done that quite successfully. If you ask me personally, I saw the Doklam crisis going on potentially for several years. But the fact of the matter is it has ended within a period of months, and that's very welcome news. And I'm sure that would be very well received politically and certainly among people in the country.
Professor Yu, what is the Chinese version, the Chinese reaction from you and your colleagues in the national defense community? How have you been receiving this piece of story?
I think it's definitely a good news. Finally, this tension has de-escalated, and the standoff ended through peaceful means and through the efforts of diplomats, not military officers. I think it's a very good, positive tendency. So I think my colleagues are very happy to see this 2 months long military standoff in Doklam area finally peacefully over.
What could we learn from this episode? I mean, there are obviously various reasons from the Indian side, for instance, Vishnu. What do you think can be drawn from this experience for the Indian side?
Well, for starters, India has got certain red lines. China obviously has certain concerns and red lines as well. We need to understand that the line of actual control, the boundary, as it were, between India and China has not been defined. And therefore, we need to respect each other's red lines. By and large, there is a mechanism in place. That mechanism ensures that there is a peaceful situation. this is an aberration, this particular situation in Doklam, just because of the geography in that particular region. China has concerns about India's infrastructure development. India has concerns about China's infrastructure development in this particular, along the line of actual control and the boundary between the two countries. The reason Doklam became a particular problem was because of Doklam was very, very close to a part of India which we call the Chicken's Neck, an area that connects India with our northeastern states. It's a very narrow sliver of land between Bangladesh to the south and China to the north in the Yadung Valley. By making roads in this particular area, India felt threatened. But India is not in denial of the fact that China has claims in this area. India understands it's a bilateral issue between Bhutan and China at one level. But obviously, when it comes to a tri-junction area, if there is a move in constructing roads which changes the way or the area where the tri-junction is located, then because it's tri, there are three countries, there's India, there's China, and there's Bhutan, which is why we were concerned in this particular case.
Professor Yu, do you agree with what Vishnu said, especially the part where this area is under dispute between China and India? What is the Chinese version?
Actually, the problem is that why China, especially China's ambassador to India, described this standoff as the most serious standoff between our two countries in the past 30 years. Actually, China and India, we have a 2,000 kilometers long common border, and we have such kind of standoff or kind of a conflict is not new. But this time, why is we describe the most serious? Because this sector, the Sikkim sector on the Chinese-Indian border is a delimited border between our two countries, not like other part of a section of border which has not been delimited. So there we have only, just as Vishnu mentioned, there's a line of actual control. But this part of the sector,
the line of actual control is in other parts
in
of
other part of it,
so
so we're not finally delimited. But this time, this area is actually delimited already through 1980 border
agreement
between Great Britain and China's Qing dynasty. So we have the agreement here, and also the Doklam area or Doklam is Chinese territory, and this since the ancient times. So even India admit this is not India's territory. It's not Indian territory.
But India has not claimed it as
India territory. It's you claim it's Bhutan's territory. Anyhow, it's not Indian territory. But you sent your troops there. Of course, we understand. There's you have the security concern over the area, but actually is quite strange for a country say I have a security concern in the other country's territory, then I can send troops there. And also you mentioned the tri-juncture area. Actually, to my knowledge, there's an agreement between China and India over the tri-juncture area. That is, if China and Bhutan have finalized the agreement over the border between China and Bhutan, then China, India, Bhutan, with three countries can set the tri-juncture points. Point. Then this is very natural. But we cannot say that India say that is a tri-juncture area, and we have the entry there. So I come into this area. So that's why China cannot accept India's execution. And we think that if you see that there's an infrastructure in this area have some security concern over impact on India. But actually, you know that India bought a lot of defense works, military works on the Indian side of the. So actually, they have more security concerns on Chinese side. If that excuse is works hold water, China have more excuse go into India's territory to stop your work there. So I think that's why China cannot say that the only solution for this Doklam or Doklam standoff is that India withdraw its troops back to Indian side.
Okay.
Vishnu,
So,
yes.
while I don't speak for the government of India, I certainly should give you the other perspective as well. while also making the point that what we have seen today actually goes beyond these differences. The differences in interpretation do exist. And each point that the professor raised is countered. And I shall elaborate those points, but we're looking at history. We move forward, and that's welcome news. Firstly, he refers to the 1890 agreement, which was reached between Tibet on the one hand and the British who were in India at that stage. India doesn't refer to that agreement. We refer to the 1993 agreement on the maintenance of peace and tranquility on the border. And that agreement says that no unilateral change on the boundary on the ground between China and India and between China and Bhutan should take place. Now, India's interpretation of this particular area is that the presence of Chinese bulldozers and a road construction party in that particular area was an attempt by China to actually alter the definition of the tri-junction in this very contentious area. And therefore, India moved into an area which India does not say is ours, only because the tri-junction, which is an area which obviously involves three countries, was being challenged, was being threatened. Now, China disagrees with that, and as the professor said, China has said that we have entered into another country, a third country as it were, which is Bhutan. I should also mention that Bhutan itself, the other point that the professor mentioned is of that Sikkim area being delimited, or in other words, broadly defined. India doesn't say that that area is defined at all. India's premise for whatever action it has taken in that area is premised on the fact that it is not delimited Sikkim. It's not been clearly defined.
But to our knowledge, to my knowledge, let me interrupt you here. The Indian government has actually on various occasions in written form acknowledged that the Sikkim section of the Chinese-Indian border have been, there is no dispute. The latest, I understand, is the 2006 Indian government statement. So I don't know from where you can draw the conclusion that this part of the border has, has already been.
There is no dispute per se, but it's not been delimited officially. At least not in the manner in which you can call it an effective border or an effective boundary between the two,
Professor Yeo,
countries. That's India's position as well.
Okay. First, as you mentioned that there's the China's building road in Doklam area changed the status quo. Actually, I don't agree with that because Doklam area is under China's administration, effective administration for many years. PLA of troops control this area. They always patrol in this area. The building on road is just to make their work easier and also for the easy transportation in the area. And also the Bhutan herdsmen, when they have the sheep, cattle in this area, pay the tax to the local government, to the Tibetan government, to the Chinese government. They have the archives kept record there. So it's not building road change status. Actually, the status quo is that the areas under China's effective control, the building of road only makes the transportation easier for the local people. And also, the 1899 treaty, we know that the Indian side have different interpretation, but actually from the official letters from your previous prime minister and also your government to Chinese government, they confirm that this treaty already delimited the border between Sikkim state of India and the China's Tibetan autonomous region. So we have the official letters and also the official records from your government say that border already delimited clearly. There's no dispute.
Okay.
And also, please, one point that I see that you have entered the third country's territory, Bhutan. No, I see that you enter Chinese territory.
All right.
Although
So
India claim that is the Bhutan territory, but we
let's not get negative on a day in which there has been so much progress that has been made. But the fact of the matter is that there is a dispute between Bhutan and China on this particular area. India's strategic concerns necessitated a particular move in this area. And in as much as you do mention the 1890 agreement, I would once again suggest that there is the 1993 agreement, which has also been signed between India and China, and India obviously has a different definition. But this is the past, okay? This has happened and we've moved forward.
Yeah, it's
and
great
I think
news.
it's important that we need to discuss what we can do to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen.
Absolutely, that's
because
why
the positions of the two countries in terms of the law and in terms of the interpretation haven't changed. What has changed is the de-escalation. China has moved back, India has moved back completely. And India is fully aware of the fact that
China does not say that it has moved back. We are on our own territory. There is a slight difference
No,
there.
China
But it's
has,
true that the two sides have disengaged, the Indian troops withdrawn, the two sides have disengaged, the situation are de-escalating. That is the important part. I think let's not grapple on these
No, but
details
that
and
last
word.
point, Liu, is important. And I don't want to belabor